Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love? Talking about games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 3,289 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. Why goodness, another great month for this apparently dying channel, according to one of the comments I got last week, which that was fun. Hey, as a caveat, if I'm gaining positive subscribers in a week and double-digit subscribers, I had years where I didn't get double-digit subscribers in a year. So if this is what my channel looks like while it's dying, keep it coming. We do have another set of 10 Xbox 360 games. I have some great news. So I was in a position at my current job where I was a contingent worker, and I just found out I made full-time. So that means I can continue to overspend on stupid Xbox 360 games, one of which I just purchased and we'll probably see next week. But that's not why you're here today. Today we are taking a look for the 16th time at some Xbox 360 games that you might want to check out. So if that sounds interesting to you, let's check it out. There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
Alright, so the theme this week is we are looking at a lot of sequels and follow-ups to games I've talked to before, but we're going to get started with one of the more ridiculous games that I've had for quite some time. I've just never popped it in, and it is notably known as a very, very bad game, and that is Vampire Reign. It's a ridiculous title. The game starts and it is clearly a schlocky B movie, and they're aware of it too, so that actually is a good thing in my mind. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with a movie called Bowfinger, starring Eddie Murphy and Steve Martin, but there's a movie within a movie called Chubby Rain, where aliens are falling down from the sky in rain, hence the rain was a little bigger, a little chubbier. And that's what this game reminds me of for some reason. It just has the vibe of that, where it's clear these people were trying to make a Metal Gear Solid-like, Splinter Cell-like in this universe, so it's super earnest in how serious it is. But it's so ridiculous at the same time that it's incredible. Now, it's very much a stealth game. You get destroyed by the vampires if you try and come at them, at least at the offset. And it feels like a Metal Gear game too. You look kind of like it. You get contacted. It looks like it's very much in that vibe. It's just sadly, if they allowed the combat where you get seen to actually kill the vampires, it'd be better. At least at the beginning of the game, it seemed very, very difficult. You can't even take more than 2 swipes from the vampires. And then it has these directions where it's showing you go here and there, but you just, it's not great. It's not a great game. I think I got it when it was around $20, $15. I think it's going to stay around there because of how bad it is. But if you like bad B movies, and can have some patience for what is truly a stealth game. At least it seems that way. Even though you have guns, big gun, they don't do anything. Check this one out. I had a surprisingly amount of fun with it outside of the gameplay, which typically I don't do, but the voice acting was so ridiculously funny. And I just enjoyed it. Like, they have this part where you're going to a recon spot. You get there, no one's there. So then the person you tell to wait in the car, you're like, all right, go to the next spot. You go to them, and then you have the other person in the car go to the next spot. I was like, why were you guys, like, what's the point? If, like, it's so stupid. I really enjoyed it. All right, the next game we're going to talk about is one I picked up. I have no bearing in the rest of the series, but I heard it was decent, and that is Way of the Samurai 3. And this is an interesting game because it seems like you get one life, and that's it. And once you die, that kind of records your playthrough. And almost like a prototype of a roguelite, where it allows you to then start over again, play through the scenario, and kind of make different choices. At least that's what it seemed like to me. So you play as a samurai that survives a huge battle, and then you have the option at times to basically submit or to fight. Or you can choose neither, and then things just might escalate and do what they will. It's pretty damn janky. It reminds me a little bit of that Elder Scrolls where you can go and attack anyone if you want, but then you got to deal with the ramifications of doing that. And I didn't get super far into it. I couldn't really figure out too much of the combat. There's options to respond to people when they're coming at you, and you can either de-escalate or escalate. And at any point you can draw your sword, and then that's it. You're getting down. So I don't know how long it is, but it was fun. It was a pretty fun experience. Just going around samuraiing on the countryside. You don't typically see it this way. Usually you're in a medieval setting. But overall, once again, another game that's floating around that $20 to $30 mark. I would need to put some more serious time into it. It's not necessarily as pick up and play as I'd like it to be, but still fun enough. Now, this is pretty much just, if you've played the first one, this is just like that with a little bit better cutscenes, I guess. And that is Record of Agas War 0. So I actually really enjoyed playing the first one. There is a sequel that's only on the PS3, and combat in this game is unique in that you get action points, and you're on kind of a tactical grid, and you have two phases to combat. So you have a movement phase for every tile you move that uses an action point, and then you have an action phase, and then you can use the remaining action points to then attack the enemies. Or you can hold pat and then bank those action points up to double the normal action point. So if you have 10 action points normally per turn, you can bank it up to 20 and then unleash some ultimate attacks. And so it felt one-to-one with the first game. The biggest difference I noticed that was between the battles, which admittedly it looks like PS1 graphics, which I know turned a lot of people off. Ironically, it makes me more interested in the game. But now the little tableaus or the little pop-ins of the characters, they seem to be 3D rendered. And so they will slightly move left and right. Or the one I really noticed was the one of the girl. Of course, Chesty LaRue, you see that kind of slightly bouncing as they're moving left and right. So clearly a Japanese developed game. Other than that, though, it really plays similarly to the first one. It does allow you to carry over the save data from the first one if you've cleared the game to this one. How that's going to work in a prequel, I don't know. But as the first game is 70 hours and this one probably is similar to that, I'm probably not going to see how that works for a long time. I mean, to this day, I remember Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, the Radiant Dawn had a similar mechanic. And I still don't know how that had any bearings on it either. But hey, what are you going to do? All right, next game is yet another sequel to a game I talked of last week. And that is Prototype 2. And I gotta tell you, I was really impressed with the first Prototype. And I'd heard the second one was just more of the same and very good. More or less, you're playing as a new character, so you're not Alex Mercer. Now you're playing as this guy. And he has it out for Alex Mercer because his wife and child were killed by Alex. At least that's what he thinks. And so he's one of the soldiers out for revenge. And at the beginning of the game, Alex then decides to kind of be coy with him. And you're chasing him all through the craziness, which it sounds like you're in another city that's getting taken over by the Mercer virus. Or is it? Is there some more government agency that's actually responsible for this? And Alex is the one trying to help. And there's a recap of the first game, but it doesn't seem like it really matters if you played the first game. Jumping into the second one, I can see how the first game, it really could be not needed. So if you'd rather play as this guy versus the other guy, you can. And there's even a multiplayer aspect, I think, but I think that's outside of the main game. But similar, your guy gets converted into another prototype. So Alex infects you and shows you the light. And then you begrudgingly are working with Alex. And then realizing that the enemy is the blah blah blah, and that's where it goes. And then it's just more of the same going through. Like I say, it's like an Infamous light, in my opinion. So it has that kind of same feel of being able to traverse through the city, but not the same level of polish, but still fun. Still a lot of fun and over-the-top violent, and it's always fun being able to absorb enemies and then turn into them temporarily. So that's a pretty cool feature. I'm actually really surprised I never really heard anything about the prototype games, and as they are both stupid cheap. This one's $8. The other one was like $6 or vice versa. If you have a 360 and you like action games, this is a great one to pick up because it's very approachable, very silly and stupid, and just a good time in my opinion. Another one that I was very frankly surprised that I enjoyed so much, another game, I feel like I remember reading about this series, but I never actually tried it for myself, and that's the Stuntman series, and this was Stuntman Ignition. And as someone who loves making films and movies and things of that nature, obviously, we're filming one right now, the thought of playing a stuntman in a big budget movie, but then going through and you know, if you know how films work, you'll set a shot and then you'll take it and there'll be practical effects and, you know, they'll add big fires in post and lava in post. Well, imagine that wasn't the case. Imagine they did manage to structure a giant lava flow going down at scale, and then you have a bunch of other drivers coming at you and you got to perform the stunt as if it was in real time. That's what this game is like. So there's different movie sets you're on the set for, and you're having to go through and basically play the roles as they're driving away from these different explosions, hopping things, going through tight corners, and you know, sometimes even lighting the car on fire. So, and you get judged on how many stunts you're pulling, how convincing it is, how good the scene looks. And it's just a really fun, satisfying take on what is more or less a racing game, but not necessarily a racing game. And as someone who gets bored with racers, this one definitely leans more into that burnout side of the things, and is just really fun. The kind of crazy scenarios you're driving through, almost like a game called Neon White. That's a recent game that's kind of like that, where you're going through and you're having to do these jumps at this time, shoot at this time, jump at this time. That's what this is like if you're driving through an insane movie set piece, and is a lot of fun. It's actually surprisingly a lot of fun and cheap. Another $8 game. Highly recommend checking that one out. All right, moving on to the next game. So there's a series I've heard of all the time. I remember seeing all the reviews, and I've seen them at GameStop to death, and I just never picked them up. I recently picked up the third game, and when I went to go pick up the first and the second game, I could not find them until I just ran across the second game yesterday, and that is Lost Planet 2. So I really didn't know anything about these games. I thought they all looked like they took place on Hoth, like some giant snow world, but I think that's just the first and the third game. In the second game, seems like you're on a jungle planet. And though I haven't played Helldivers 2, I imagine this might be a progenitor to that, because you can go with a multiplayer squad, go down to this area that has these giant bug creature things, and then some human enemies as well. And you're just going and blowing them out of the sky, blowing them out of the water. Like, it's just dumb arcade action fun. Squad based, a little bit like Left 4 Dead, but not nearly as intelligent, in my opinion, or as diverse with the kind of enemies coming at you. But it was stupid fun. I enjoyed it. You go through the levels and you unlock nodes that then become respawn points. So if you die, you then respawn there instead of at the beginning of the level. So it's funny. I was unaware of these campaign modes that behaved as if they were in a multiplayer deathmatch, because Section 8 did a similar thing too, and so did Lost Planet. And I could see this being a lot of fun with friends. I believe it is regular co-op if you're playing, so up to 2 players. But if you want to get that big multiplayer experience, then you are looking at Xbox Live. Would I recommend picking up all 3 of them? I don't know. Based on the second one, it was fun enough. But if the first one is just the same and the third one's just the same, especially because the third one is more expensive than the other 2, we'll see. You know, I'll probably check out the third one, and I'd still like to pick up the first one. But it's just one of those theories that you hear about all the time in this generation. And this seemed like a fun one to pick up and check out. So yeah, one of you guys, it's like $10. You might be interested in that one as well. All right, now this one I'm bringing up because I got this in a lot. So this came with the lot that I picked up, Cold Sip Saga. And I really had no interest in this game. I've heard of these games to death. And then I finally broke and bought the Fire Emblem version of it just because, you know, I heard about, the Dynasty Warrior series, and this is Dynasty Warrior 7, is just a game where you're going around beating up tons and tons of guys on a map. You're one person and you have hundreds of people and you just swipe your swords and you take out huge ass swaths of them. And it sounded like fun in a Fire Emblem game. It sounds like fun in a Zelda game, but I mean, there's 7 of these. I didn't even know. So I put this one in. And I can tell you, it plays identically to the one that was of the Fire Emblem, but I have no basis or care going into this world. You start on a map, and you have basically your base that's being attacked by their generals, and then you can go and try and take their base. And as you're going through the different levels, sometimes you'll have, booby traps coming after you, like either the wind's blowing at you or you have giant boulders coming down towards you. And then if you go and you take out generals on the other side, it will then remove that facet from the battlefield so that you can then eventually get and take out their commander and continue the story. And when you get to the commander, there's a bit of a boss fight there. You have 2 basic attacks. You have a light attack and a heavy attack, and then you get a charge meter that builds. And when that meter is fully built, you can then unleash a special attack. And that's basically it. That's all there really is to the game. It's kind of boring, in my opinion. There's not much to it. It's kind of the same way I felt about Fire Emblem Warriors, but these got to appeal to somebody. Because like I said, there's 7 of these. They have tons of spin-offs. I may even be up around the 11 or 12 at this point. But let me know. Am I missing something here? Am I playing it the wrong way? It just was one of those ones where, I had it in the collection. Might as well give it a shot. And it's probably like a $10, $15 game. Like the Dynasty Warriors, they're not really that expensive. There's also a tactics version of Dynasty Warriors on like the PS2. I picked up one of them. Are those any good? Have any of you guys ever played those? Anyways. All right, here's one that I have been wanting to talk about. It felt a little too known, but I figured since we're getting into this part of the series anyways, where I'm running out of the quote-unquote hidden gems, we might as well just talk about some of the other games I just wasn't experienced with, especially because this one just had a very big budget sequel come out this year, and that is Dragon's Dogma. Now, there is a version of it called Dragon's Dogma Risen, I believe, that comes with DLC on it. If you can find that one, grab that one, but I just have the vanilla version. Still a cheap game. Either of them go for like $8 to $15. Nothing bad like that. And it's a surprisingly fun hack and slash combat game where you get companions that come around with you and kind of assist in battle. You don't really have to bother with them too much. And you're going out and you can take on these crazy giant mythical creatures and have the ability to climb onto them almost like Shadow of the Colossus. And the beginning of the game really does a good job of setting the tone. Unlike other games where, like for instance for Prototype, where it gives you all the powers at the beginning and then it robs them of you. In this game you start as a different character, finishing their quest, and then after that you can design your character and get into the real world. And in my opinion, that's a better way of introducing you to kind of stripping down the power, is not having it be the character you're currently playing as. But it's harder to do that in a game like Prototype because you're supposed to be the only one. Well, until the second one. But yeah, Dragon's Dogma's fun. Once again, another one of these kind of Western RPG action combat games, although it's developed by Capcom, so it's very, very solid. I've not played the Monster Hunter series, but looking at the game, I've seen gameplay from both. It does remind me a little bit of that. And a game that I've heard that even though the second one that came out was very good, I've heard people still prefer the first one. So it's one to check out, especially if the second one looks interesting. This one, like I said, is dirt cheap. All right, getting down to the last couple of them here. So we'll do that one last. This one, once again, is another very common game I'm sure you've heard of, but, it's always nice to talk about because people forget these things came out physically. especially now that the store is closed, and if you want to play it on the 360, well, I'm sure it's backwards compatible. Anyways, that is Red Dead Redemption Undead Nightmare. Now, this was a really cool thing they were doing back in 2010-ish, is they would make these standalone DLCs of the game, much like Infamous did Rush of Blood, or not Rush of Blood, Infamous did whatever the vampires thing they did. It's basically the entire map from Red Dead Redemption. Imagine a zombie apocalypse outbreak took place, so it's its own separate campaign, and it really leans into the kind of the theme. So you can find Bigfoot. I think there's the Headless Horseman. There's maybe not, but the just kind of like demon horses and all like the Riders of the Apocalypse. And it's not nearly as good or as long as the original game, but it still has all of the mechanics from the original game. And you can just go around having fun, shooting zombies and hog tying witches and just use special abilities. And it's just a nice way to utilize the Red Dead Redemption map in kind of a fun, 3 to 5 hour, 8 hour experience, depending on how long you're enjoying it, and just get some more content out of that game that is just kind of a fun thing that they don't really do anymore. Like, you don't see this happen anymore, where they take, because this is a huge DLC, and then the fact that they release it as a standalone disc that you can buy, always cool. Red Dead Redemption is one of my favorite games of all time, and I like it way more than the second one, to be honest with you. The second one, being a prequel, in my opinion, ruins any stakes whatsoever the game could have, because you already know where it's going, versus the first Red Dead Redemption, you had no idea. Same thing with Undead Nightmares. It's like, what the hell's going on? So it's fun. It's a good time. It's still very, very cheap. I'd recommend picking up, having a physical copy, because that's what I do. I like physical copies. All right, then the last game we're going to talk about, which is a sequel to a game I spoke of a few weeks ago. And I really enjoyed the first one, but man, I think the sequel might be way, way better. And that is The Darkness 2. Now, the fun thing about The Darkness is that you're playing as a regular guy who's in the mob, and then you find you have this supernatural smoke creature called the Darkness coming out, and you have two different heads, one on the left, one on the right. They eat hearts, do all this other crap. Well, The Darkness 2, now I didn't beat the first one, obviously I haven't beaten any of these games, but it sounds like there's a major spoiler. Big character dies from The Darkness 1 that they tell you about in The Darkness 2, and then you're seeing them. But is it them or is it not them? After the first game, you lock the darkness away. You won't let it come out because you got too crazy. But at the beginning of the game, you are a mob boss and there is a hit on you. And then there's this really cool set piece where you're getting dragged by one of your associates through basically a restaurant as people are getting killed, things are happening. Like, it's very brutal, just as brutal as the first one. At the very beginning, you're on a date with some people, and one of them just gets a shot right through the head, and you're like, oh man, this business is about to pick up. And finally, you're about to die, and you unleash the darkness. It heals your destroyed leg, and then both the left and right come out. The graphics look even better than the first game. And it definitely, I think it's a 4-year difference between the first and the second game. The first game, I believe, was a very early 360 game. This is one more in the middle of the life cycle, and you can tell it feels polished. It feels way better. They have much better direction. The visuals are not as muddy. And in my opinion, they really improved the gameplay experience, because you now have the ability to, not only are you firing with both your trigger fingers, but then the bumpers allow you to use these other arms. So it's almost like you have 4 triggers, which is very cool. You can use the one on your right as a whip ability, and the one on your left you can use to pick up and throw things. And there's even the ability when you pick up an enemy to do an execution, and eventually you can then use the talent tree to make that execution give you health, just like eating the hearts gives you health. And it's just, I had a lot of fun with this one. I really had a lot of fun with this one. I've heard the Darkness games were good. They're better than you've heard. They are really, especially this one. I really, really like the Darkness 2, and it's a great way to end this video. It's still a $10 or $15 game. Once again, we're doing another batch of games that are still fairly affordable. I think the most these get up to around $30. But let me know. Darkness 2, great game. So that's what you get for this week, guys. I know, another 360 video. I'm not done with them yet. I had someone reach out to me and said I was done with them. I'm not done with them. I got to do a tier list at some point. We're going to talk about the expensive ones at some point. When I do that, we'll probably run through all of the ones I played, and the ones I haven't played, I probably need to play. But we are getting to the end. We are getting to the end. Probably one or two more, and then we'll get back to my channel dying, okay? But anyways, guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching the videos. It really does mean the world to have you here. Hear your great comments. See you guys being respectful. Even the trolls, whatever. Thanks for the engagement. Gets the videos out in front of people. So yes, it's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.